So I think I mentioned before in one of my other videos, I was going to get an opportunity to speak to a watchmaker from Zenith, along with Stuart, who is the customer service rep for LVMH, and specifically obviously for Zenith as part of the LVMH group within the UK. I've literally just come off that call. I did ask if I could record it. Unfortunately, I wasn't allowed to record it, which I'm devastated about because it was brilliant and it actually exceeded my expectations. It was myself, Stuart, and a guy called Luke, who is one of the guys in head of the movements division within Zenith, and it was just an opportunity for me to ask the questions around what happened with my watch, and just generally around the watch itself, the movement specifically, obviously, and the complexities around that, and how it was created, how long it took to create, the effort that goes into creating it. And it's a lot of it is far more detailed than I thought. And the watchmaker actually showed me the digital renders, the side-on view of the movement itself, and was able to deconstruct the movement while I was on the call, taking apart the different layers to kind of answer the questions that I had around how is the power reserve, how it is, what happened to my specific watch, what was wrong with it, how did they fix it, and I will come on to that in a second, but I won't be able to use all the technical terms that he used, obviously. The length of time it takes to produce one of these movements and all that type of stuff. So coming on to the issue that I had with my watch. So I do have previous videos around when I bumped it, the second hand would move off 12 o'clock. Sometimes it would start and the second hand would stop within a second and you reset it. And then when you reset the chronograph, the second hand would fall one or other side of the 12 o'clock position. So I was obviously keen to understand what happened there. And that was the main focus of the initial part of the hour-long call. And I had more questions, but I didn't have time. I went on for longer than an hour. So ultimately, it came down to, I think he said about 200 of the, was it 200? There were a few hundred parts, one specific part that wasn't quite the right shape. So when it was engaging with the chronograph, there's kind of like I think he called it a hammer, and it engages with the cogs. And where it was engaging with the cog, it wasn't quite the right shape, so it wasn't hanging or stopping the chronograph from moving quite properly. I'm doing an awful job of explaining this, so apologies. But fundamentally, you've got a cog that moves around, which disengages the chronograph. You've got a hammer that comes in, and it's shaped in a very specific way to stop the movement or the chronograph from moving, and then obviously engage it. And that profile of that particular piece wasn't quite right. So all they had to do was change one piece, and then the watch has been absolutely fine ever since. I can knock it, I can play around with it as much as I want. It always resets to the right position. The hand never falls off 12 o'clock. And it's just so great to have that. I've had watches go back to Tudor. So I had the GMT. Everyone knows about the issues with the GMTs. And they never came out and explained any of this and didn't give me the opportunity to talk to them. Obviously, they're a big brand, I get that. But being given the opportunity to speak to a watchmaker from a company like this, and for them to give up an hour of their time, it's just crazy. And he went into detail explaining that in far better detail than I've just done there. So again, you'll have to excuse me. I hope I've explained it well enough for you to understand. But it kind of gives you the confidence, not only that my watch is now absolutely spot on, but also that I want to buy more watches from Zenith. It's made me love the brand even more than just buying this watch has made me love the brand. So one person did ask me, do I regret buying by Zenith? No, I don't, because the customer experience has just been so fantastic, and this has just topped it off for me. So on my list of things to do at some point is to visit the Zenith factory. That would just be the icing on the cake of this whole experience. And hopefully Luke will still be there, and I'll get to speak with him. But some other interesting questions that I got the answers to. One I think that's around a power reserve. So I measured my watch and it was closer to 70 hours of power reserve, not 60. And the reason for this is when they do the power reserve, they test it with the chronograph running. So instead of like car manufacturers who, when they give you the weight of their car, will kind of quote a weight, but maybe it's missing some fluids or whatever it is. And there's always issues with companies saying their car weighs this much, but actually it's 200 kilos more. They actually do the opposite. They tell you it's 60-hour power reserve, but if you're not running a chronograph, I did mine. It was 70, I think it was just over 70 hours or around 70 hours. So there's an extra 10 hours-ish of power reserve in the watch. And I think that's fantastic. I think it's really great the way they give you the lesser figure as opposed to the greater figure. I don't know who would leave their chronograph running for 24 hours or 2 days or whatever, but it was really good. Then there are other things, like it takes between, I kind of got this right actually, so with a team of people, between 3 and 5 years to create this movement. There was a huge amount of emphasis placed on the thinness of the movement, because I think anyone who knows about watches will know a flyback chronograph. A chronograph by itself is usually a modular component that companies just fit over the top of a freehand and a date, and then the watch becomes very thick. Whereas with this movement and with lots of higher end movements, it's all integrated. It's all integrated into one movement. So you've got 304 mechanical pieces running the entire movement, all integrated, not sitting on top of each other, kind of bolted on as additional capability. And a huge amount of effort went into making it thin. And there were more patents than I appreciated, actually. And the way, I can't go into the details of it because it'll get lost. And I'm not able to properly articulate it to make it beneficial probably for the audience watching this. But a huge amount of effort went into every single element of design, not just the big date function. And he showed me a difference between how it used to work and how it works now with the big date capability that he's put in place, which has, like, I think it was 3 patents against it. And the number of components and thickness was almost halved. I think it was halved. It went from 1.5 millimeters to 0.75 millimeters just for that function. And then for the chronograph, there were other innovations there, which also allowed for the watch to be, the movement to be thinner. So I did say to him at the end, you know, out of interest, when you've gone to all this effort to make such a thin movement for such a complicated watch as it is, and his view on it was a chronograph is only, when you think about standard complications on a watch, the only complication which he believes is more complicated to make than a chronograph, especially with a flyback, is a minute repeater. And anyone watching this will know what a minute repeater is. A very, very complex movement to make. And he does believe that the chronographs are underestimated in terms of complexity and how they're manufactured, unless you're just buying it in, obviously, like a Value 7750 or something. If you're making it yourselves, it's an extremely complex complication to engineer because of all the moving parts. And when you add the flyback capability on top, it's very difficult. So I said to him, with the flyback, with the chronograph, with the big date, with the extra complication around not being able to change the date between 10 and 12, does it kind of irk you when someone just puts quite a thick crystal on the watch and makes what could be a 12 millimeter to 13 millimeter thick watch 14 millimeters? I think it triggered him a little bit. I didn't mean to. I just wanted to understand what the thought process was behind that. And it kind of came down to a couple of things, which is what I thought, which is aesthetics. So people do like a box, quite thick crystal. I've got other videos in this, so you'll see it more properly there. But ultimately, it doesn't affect how the watch wears, because you kind of eventually kind of see through the crystal and you just see the 12 millimeter thick case, especially because it's black. So the watch wears thinner than the 14 millimeters suggests, and I've mentioned this before. So the first thing was aesthetic. Same as the reason for putting a sapphire crystal on the case back. You know, that would reduce the thickness of the watch, but you want to see the movement. But also the hand stack. Because you've got additional hands on there, you need to have a safe distance between the hands. And as a result, while the crystal probably could be thinner than it is, it makes it safe to have the hands at that thickness. The crystal at that thickness to accommodate for the hands. And also water resistancy. I hadn't appreciated having the thicker crystal would increase water resistancy of 100 meters. So it gets the watch to 100 meters. So I'm not going to use mine in the pool, but you could use it in the pool. I did ask about operating the chronograph, the pushers in the pool, and he said, don't do that. He said, in theory, you can do it, but I think, again, everyone watching this will know you shouldn't operate a chronograph underwater. So I could talk about this for longer. It was incredible to have an hour's worth of his time. You know, he's obviously, like I say, a very busy guy within Zenith, a lot to do. But what an experience, what a great experience that the brand that offered. And thank you to Stuart, I'm sure you'll probably watch this, for setting that up. Thoroughly enjoyable, way more questions. And as I say, I hope to get to the factory at some point to actually go around and see it and understand it. And I could do this video for a heck of a lot longer, but I'm just gutted that I wasn't able to record it, because even as an hour long as it was, I think it would have been great for people to see and experience what I got to experience. So yeah, this is the kind of conclusion of the issues I've had with my Zenith. It's still here. I still love it. I don't regret it. It was a 40th birthday present. I'll be keeping it for as long as I can until I go to the grave. I wear it more than my other watches, and it's making me question the need for my other watches in my collection. So yeah, buy Zenith. If you've got a problem, they'll fix it. If you've got a good, you know, go to the service centre. Don't go through your authorised dealer. That would be one thing I'd highly recommend. And yeah, I'm just super buzzed about it. I had a great time. So as always, if you have any questions, please just let me know.